is always good. And in control of it.
Did you get all the budget stuff I sent you?
All right, I'd like to welcome everyone to the October 18th, 2010 workshop, budget workshop for the Board of Selectmen. If everyone would just please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. This is kind of unusual because we don't always have a workshop, but I know that a few of you have made the effort to come down here for public comment, so I'll take the public comment tonight. If you could do me a big favor, just kind of make it as short as you can, and then after that, we'll get started in with our budget discussion. So I don't know who's first up on the list.
Good evening. My name is John Heichel, 483 Mass Road, Goffstown. 2 points. One is on November 2nd, I would request that the road in Bernardville and all roads remain open that day, as opposed to the primary day where the road in Bernardville was not open and detours and people had to drive around a lot. So that's something that I've been asked to pass along to you, that the road in Bernardville not be shut down on November 2nd. One more. I didn't write it down.
Next public comment.
Good evening, Goffstown and members of this board. I appreciate all the public service that you give to your community. I once sat as an alderman in Manchester in 2000, and I know how much work it is and how hard it is to put a budget together that makes as many people as happy as can possibly be. My name is Joseph Kelly Lavasser. I'm running for state senate in your district, which encompasses all of Goffstown and 4 wards in Manchester. I'm a part-time lawyer. I've practiced in this wonderful building in front of Judge Lawrence a few times. I've been out to Goffstown many times. In 2002, I ran against the incumbent, Mr. D'Alessandro, and received 47% of the vote and did very well in Goffstown. And I'm running again 8 years later, hoping that I get an opportunity to serve not only this community, but of course Manchester at the same time. I own a restaurant in Manchester. I've been in the restaurant business for over 24 years. I started when I was 25, a little place called Joe Kelly's. And I recently, about almost a year ago, purchased a place called Theo's in downtown Manchester, a very popular place. I've been very community-minded. I do a television show for over 10 years, a community activist show where it's a call-in show for people to call in with their issues, and we have a lot of great guests on there. Mr. D'Alessandro has actually been on a couple of times. And I'm hoping a lot of people will get a chance to see the debate between Mr. D'Alessandro and I, which is airing on your station over the next 2 weeks. I think you'll find us to both be very civil, unlike a lot of other debates going on around the country. Myself and Mr. D'Alessandro have a very great deal of respect for each other. We've worked together before on other issues, and we had a very good debate. We didn't agree on a lot of things, but we still were very civil to each other. I want to thank a lot of the people. Many people in Goffstown have been very, very kind to me as I've come through this town, gone door to door. People have been very receptive. And I'd just like to say, as far as downshifting money coming into the towns and cities, it's a very big issue for us in Manchester also. They downshifted $600,000 to us that we had to make up in property taxes. So I understand that's a very big issue. For us, it was the meals and rooms tax was a big issue because our civic center is paid by those bonds. So for us, it was a huge issue. It's something that I care very deeply about, making sure that we can afford our property taxes. I know as I go door to door in this town, property taxes are probably the #1 issue around. So if I'm elected to Senate, I will do everything I can to make sure that the state does not downshift anything to us, and if they do, they have to match that dollar to dollar with revenue ideas. I am a brand new father. I have an 8-month-old son, and it's exciting to be a father, and it's exciting to be able to run for public office. And I just want to say that I came to the regatta again. I haven't been here for a couple of years, but it was an awesome time. Amazing amount of people and the great fun by all the children and all the families in Manchester. And of course, I mean in Goffstown, but I was amazed at how many people came from all the surrounding communities as I was meeting people face to face. I want everybody to know that the for Trails is a very big deal for me. I am an avid biker. I love to get outside in the weather, and I'm hoping that someday we will be able to link these two great communities together, and I look forward to trying to find revenue sources to do that if possible. So, anybody wants to get a hold of me, I have a website called lavasserforsenate.com, which is one word. You can call me at my office, which is 622-7575. I return all my calls. And if anybody would like me to come meet with them and talk with them about any specific issue or call me, I feel that's part of public service. As you all know, I have no problem answering any questions or any concerns, and I'd love everybody to know where I stand on any issues that are very important to them. So again, the number is 622-7575. My name is Joseph Kelly Lavasser. Please come out and vote on November 2nd. I look forward to seeing you all there, and I want to thank everybody here for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment?
Good evening, Pierre Pouliot. I'm a sergeant with the Goffstown Police Department, also a taxpayer, but I'm here representing the police department. And I want to talk to you folks just for a minute about our Halloween Safety Day we're having on Saturday the 23rd at Hannaford's from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And at this event, we're going to be passing out our annual free necklace to the members of the community so they can go trick-or-treating safely. We'll also be having members of the fire department and the police department, the Red Cross, our CERT team there to pass out some safety tips and some trinkets that we have and to put on a little show. So that's Saturday at Hannaford's, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I did not bring enough for everybody here, so it wouldn't be fair to share with the two that I have, but if you'd like a glow stick, come on by. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other public comment? Carl, you wanted to make some comments? All right. We're going to try to keep. We have a couple little housekeeping things. One is our consensus folder, and in the consensus folder we have our AP warrants, we have employee status reports, we have our tax rate acceptance, which we talked about last week, and we also have event permit applications. One of them is for the Maple Avenue Elementary School Family Fun Day on October 30th. I'm sorry, that is the only one, and that's at Maple Avenue School. So I would need a motion to approve the consensus folder. We have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Seconded by Selectman Camposano. All those in favor say aye. 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 That's 5-0. All right. And any other old business?
Yeah.
Okay.
At our last session, we approved a letter to go to a resident concerning a Class 6 road, and the summary of that letter was it's not a town problem. My analysis that led to that conclusion was looking at the wrong site on the road when Carl and I visited. The problem is not at the culvert. It's further upgrade, and I'd like an opportunity to present the issue back before the board again next session so that we could have fresh information and perhaps reach a different conclusion. If that's permissible, and
yes,
the letter would be held, and then we'd have an opportunity to either send the same letter or a different letter.
All right. Everybody good with that? We'll put it on the agenda for next week. All right, just to give everybody a little bit of a background, I guess just to let, from a GTV announcement perspective, this is our first Board of Selectmen meeting, I guess first governmental meeting that will be streaming live over the internet. So for all of you out there in internet world, welcome. Tonight is a budget workshop, and we started this process several weeks ago, and we have talked to our department heads, and presentations have come before us. There were 3 different presentations that each department head was expected to present, and they did a nice job in that. One of them was a budget for what they thought they needed for their department. The second was a level-funded budget, and then the third was what would the budget look like if there was a 10% reduction. Tonight, we're here to formalize what will be our budget presentation to the Budget Committee, which will be this coming Saturday here at Town Hall. I believe it's, 8 or 8:30 a.m. And we expect that to probably be, I would think, a minimum of 5 hours, might go longer than that. But there will be breakfast, and we'll have lunch for the participants as well. So expect a long day, but hopefully the thought process there is we wouldn't have to meet every single Monday and go over this. So with that said, last week the board went through the remaining budgets, and essentially what we arrived at was coming forward with what we call a level funded budget, or a budget that is the same tax rate as we have this year. And as you see before you, Sue has given us two packets. One of them is a 2011 town budget summary, and then the other one is a town revenue. Now, the reason why, obviously, the revenue is as equally as important to the budget, because if you're looking at the tax rate implication of it, in order to reach that level tax rate, you have to make decisions based upon what you expect will be your anticipated revenues for the 2011 year. So what I'd like to do first is kind of go through the revenue picture, because that's something that maybe some of you have not seen a whole lot of. Sue, I'm going to lean on you a little bit more, because I know you and Janice in particular have worked on the revenue piece. So not to put you too much on the spot, but if we can kind of go over the summary page.
There are two handouts tonight. One is the appropriations, and the thinner one, unfortunately, is the revenue. So if you take the revenue sheet, you can see there's a summary sheet at the top. The detail follows. And on the summary sheet, it indicates that basically our revenues are flat. They're down about $51,000 from last year. We have no word yet whether or not the 10% room and meals tax that was supposed to just be for the last biennium if we're going to get that. So we do not anticipate that 10% in room and meals. I think we won't know the answer to that until after the elections, which is pretty late in our process. So I also want to say that a level funded budget and a level tax rate are not the same.
Right.
Even if you level funded this budget with a reduction in the operating budget, you wouldn't have a level tax rate. It would still be a slight increase, probably around 15 cents.
Right.
And that's assuming no growth in the town. Now, we assumed that this year, but there was growth. Very small, just under 0.5%.
And generally speaking, Sue, I mean, I think we try to be conservative with our revenue projections, but if I'm not mistaken, I believe that we generally within like 1 or 2% of target, like
Within 1%.
Within 1% almost every year. So it's done conservatively, and I think the track record for what we've done, is pretty good. By way of background, on Saturday when we do our presentations, I'm going to just do a little bit of a short presentation, hopefully no more than 10 or 15 minutes, just on the state of Goffstown. We're going to look at like some 5-year trending, kind of talk about our fund balance, talk about just a little different things, just to try to frame this thing a little bit better. As we know, we do hear a lot of discussion at the national level, unemployment being 9.7% in Hillsborough. In the state of New Hampshire, it's 5.7 or 5.6%. We're trying to get some data specific to Hillsborough, even perhaps Goffstown for Saturday. I'm not sure we can drill it down to that level. But also to try to give folks, history of tax rates, history of just some different things, so we get just not just a 1-year snapshot, but just try to look at what are some of the trends that we're seeing. As Sue said, our revenues have been pretty flat the last couple of years, and as I stated last week, in the past when we have had revenue growth due to increased valuation, we've been able to support healthcare increases, salary increases, and some other things just simply by the fact that we've had an increase in our tax base or our valuation, as well as maybe some things like some modest increases in motor vehicle registrations or some other types of things. With it being flat, we really don't have that luxury anymore. So what I'd like to do now is kind of go, we'll go kind of department by department, and the goal that we were trying to achieve is to take a look at what can we do to try to keep the tax rate level. And I guess it would be easy for us to start off with Public Works because they're the first one on the list. So what I might ask is that the Selectmen's liaison and the department head kind of tag team the discussion as to where they're going with the budget and what items need to be trimmed in order to achieve our target. So, Selectman Pierce, I'll turn it over to you to have the discussion with regard to Public Works.
The Public Works budget for 2010 was on the order of, back one page, was on the order of $4,858,000. The initial department head request for the budget was $5,071,000, a growth of roughly on the order of 200,000. I sat down with Carl last week and went through the recommendations that he presented to us as to what would happen if he had to implement a flat budget. And from all of those recommendations, he and I picked about 2/3 of them, which did result in a flat budget. And so the one that I'm presenting to you this evening that's on your handout is technically $2,400 less than the 2000 budget. It turned out to be $4,856,284. We achieved those cuts, which amounted to, from his original proposal to us a month and a half back, it was $215,000 of cuts spread over 18 line items. And I can very briefly, in one phrase, cover what those 18 items are. I'll cover the Public Works operations first. And under consulting, contracted services, eliminating maintenance for a copier, there'll be less video of pipelines, less hazardous waste funding for the material turned into the transfer station, which would be a burden on us to dispose of. Under line striping, 10% less in that particular line, and would probably mean some less white fog lines on the side of the road, painted, refreshed. Heavy equipment rental, eliminated about 80% of that line, and if the impact of that would be if we had multiple projects going on at one time where some rental equipment would facilitate multiple projects at one time, then that would be a slowdown on those projects rather than renting equipment. Painting and reconditioning equipment. We deleted the entire $40,000 for maintenance on a new body for a 10-wheeler, and we're relying on the fact that this board's going to endorse the CIP element for a new vehicle.
Could you repeat that again?
Yes? I'm sorry?
Could you just repeat that again?
Yes, that was the reconditioning equipment line.
Mm-hmm. I know.
And it's the amount of change was taking $40,000 out of that $81,500. $40,000 was the estimated cost of putting a new body on a 10-wheeler.
And the alternative is?
The alternative is we would like to succeed with the CIP item to provide a new vehicle rather than maintaining the old one.
Okay.
We had 10% less in the funds to provide salt in the wintertime. Potential impact, perhaps less multiple passes on the same street on any particular storm. Code patching of roads, 35% less for that funding. Bridge repairs, we took about 2/3 out of that line because we're fortunate that the Department of Transportation has assessed a damaged bridge we had in town, and it's not going to be as expensive to repair as we anticipated, so we took out $5,500 off of an $8,000 line. We had 5% less in road resurfacing, amounting to $18,000, and 45% less in sidewalk maintenance. Altogether, those 9 items add up to a deduction of $182,000. I'm going to switch now to cemetery operations. We had 6 items to reduce. The heavy equipment rental, we zeroed that line out, was $500. And should such equipment be necessary at the cemetery, we would rely on DWB equipment and DPW equipment. And of course, if that was moved over to the cemetery for a small project, it would perhaps impact any ongoing road construction. Water, 15% water being used at the cemetery. 10% less in maintenance supplies, which would impact equipment upkeep. We had 5% less in maintenance charges, which would impact how hiring of ground treatment activity, and 5% less in supplies, which we use to treat ground, whether it's insect or fertilizer. And we did add $100 in order to fully cover a replacement of some doors that we anticipate to do next year. So those 6 items took just under $4,000 out of the cemetery budget. Finally, we had solid waste operations. Only 3 items were reduced in this solid waste. We took $16,500 out of the consulting contracting services. And essentially, that's going to drop a contingency that we've had for a repair of the cap at Surratt. And essentially, that's, if we eliminate the contingency, then we're sort of self-funded, self-insured in case there's a problem with the cap that's on Surratt. Diesel fuel, 5% less in diesel fuel. And that's based on the fact that we have less trucking to Charlestown due to the fact that we have the compactor installed in our recyclable waste. The third item was maintenance charges for equipment, a 15% cut. With the impact there would be upkeep on equipment other than vehicles. Altogether, those 3 items allowed us to reduce the budget just under $29,000. So altogether, $215,000 off, and I overachieved. We're $2,000 under a flat budget. I'll be glad to put that back in if there's room.
This is an opportunity for questions from the board. Anyone? Any questions?
Yeah. Just question on the heavy equipment rental. The way you indicated was that it would slow the project down. You anticipate it won't prevent the projects from being done?
Correct. The concept is our town equipment's being used on a road project. Specialized equipment might be needed to assist on multiple projects. The equipment would be spread thinner on projects and might slow down those projects.
Okay.
We haven't discussed what those projects are on the road plan.
Okay. Okay. No, that's fine. Thank you.
So a theoretical spreading of equipment.
My question was, this was on public works, resurfacing and sidewalk maintenance. So there's a 45% less on sidewalks, but 5% less on resurfacing. I was just kind of curious as to how you arrived at that.
We, in the initial presentation Carl made as to how he would achieve a flat budget, he had $18,000 out of resurfacing. I picked all of that $18,000, and he also he wanted to zero the sidewalk maintenance by taking $71,000 out of that, and I chose to go about 50-50, 45. I wanted to only take 45% of that, and leave something in the sidewalk line to have at least some project next summer.
Any other questions? Anything?
We're gonna come back around.
We'll come back around. I just want to, while it's still fresh in everybody's mind. Steve, you have any questions?
On the bridge repair, you said that the actual estimate came in lower than what was anticipated?
This is Henry Street Road Bridge over the Piscataqua, and anticipating some more serious replacement of metal parts on that bridge. It turned out that the Department of Transportation only wants us to drill a hole at the end of a crack, which would effectively prevent that crack from going deeper.
Okay. And who's doing the drilling? I mean, is that a contract? Do we need special equipment for that?
We'll drill it.
It'll be done by a contractor?
No, we'll do it.
You know,
We have the equipment.
the plans from Department of Transportation specified where that hole has to be to the nearest eighth of an inch and what diameter to drill.
Okay.
Any other
Okay.
questions? All right, moving along then. Next will be the fire department, and I believe Selectman Campusano and Chief O'Brien. Sheriff?
Do you want me to go through these?
We don't have a fire handout,
No.
just so everyone knows,
No.
okay.
So I'll... This now?
You can start and then.
Okay. Start on the
you can fill in
fire.
the blanks if you'd like.
Sure. We'll start on the fire line versus EMS. Where's that in our packet? That's the last, towards the back.
If you could, for the ease, and the sake of the DPW one, it was highlighted.
Yes. What I'll do is
If you could just use the last 5 digits of the account number as we go through it. It's the last 3 pages.
Fire
Oh, I got
EMS.
Fire EMS, I saw.
I don't see fire. Sue, is there any
Is there any
budget?
fire? Yeah, I don't see
Just
fire.
No,
the
it's not
original?
in there because I didn't receive one back. Everyone was emailed the
Okay.
template to work from Thursday.
So you'll have to go off of that one.
All right, well, I have extra copies here, so, I mean, I have my own from last week.
Do you want me to print some out?
You know what?
Got it right up here.
It would be helpful, yeah.
Okay.
Let's do this. While we're doing that,
So I've got it on my thumb drive if you like the numbers
Oh,
also.
you have the revised one? That would even be better. I only have the one I
why
sent
it's a
you last
workshop.
Thursday.
Yeah, if we can just do that, and, you know, in the meantime, we'll go to, I'll start talking about the library, Sue, while you're working on that.
Okay.
Okay? The library director, Diane Hathaway, is out of town, and I did speak with Jennifer Foley, who's the library, she's the chairman of the library trustees, and I talked to her about where the board was going in terms of attempting for a level-funded budget, which would result in about an $8,000 decrease to their budget. The library trustees does formulate their own budget. I did tell her that was the direction that the board was going. However, in fairness to the trustees, I don't think it's our place to tell them what lines would be adjusted. They are meeting this Wednesday, and I believe that'll give us ample time, once we hear back from the trustees, to get something prepared for Saturday's budget presentation. So if everyone, I don't know where they'll take the $8,000 from, but suffice to say that they are going to meet on Wednesday to do that. Is that all right? You have a question, or?
Could you explain $8,000, because the department head library was $691,000. It's going down to $664.
Well, the last that I had was 8,000. Hold on, that was from when we talked on.
That's 27.
Yep, no, I hear you.
27,000.
I'm just going off my notes from my meeting on Friday when it was 8,000. So hold on.
Is that the result? Everyone's starting with frozen wages and the cafeteria benefits adjusted, which is a difference between the department head.
Well, I'm looking at the sheet.
Yeah.
Right.
I never put this in.
Yeah, hold on.
Which shows the library potentially coming in exactly flat.
Bear with me a second. I'm looking for that sheet that we spoke about, Sue, on Friday. I'll help you.
Mine were pretty good.
How many copies do we need of the chiefs?
Well,
Only
minimum.
one of whatever you had for the original.
We'll do 10, how's that?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Dave.
691 down to 664.
Yeah,
There's 27,000 difference.
right. It has always been, though. Bear with me a second.
Where's the other one?
All right. We'll figure that one out.
It's your intention to have
The level
flat.
fund, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's up to the commission,
Right.
trustees
To get there,
Figure out
to get to the number.
whether
I just want to,
27
I had talked
or
to
8.
Jennifer about, well, that's a big number. That's a big difference for the
Well,
library.
for the library.
So, all right, we'll keep going then. Steve, would you be prepared to talk about Parks and Rec?
We can go with that. Essentially, a big part of the reduction within Parks and Rec would be the closing of Roy Pool. Part of that the savings would be about $18,000 in lifeguards, $3,500 in chemicals. Some of the things to consider with this, though, is that when we close the pool, we're also going to give up revenue. Okay, and part of that is that as we go forward into next year, we are looking at a revenue fee schedule for those who participate in the summer programs. Without a pool, we won't run the summer program. So it's one of the considerations we'll go there, so you offset a revenue on that one. I'm not sure. And the second piece with that also is that in CIP, we got 62,000 for the repairing of the pool, which is not part of that budget line, so that kind of leaves us out in the open. What do we do with that also regarding, do we go forward with that within CIP or not? And if we do leave the pool open, we don't do anything with the pool, are we looking at a closure of the pool or it's a permanent closure, and how does that affect the condition of the pool as it digresses? So I just want to say, as far as we go forward with this, you do also, you're going to, honestly, there will be an effect on the revenues by closing that pool. Then there'll be the question of, do we close the pool altogether? And obviously, there won't be a summer program at Roy also.
Any questions for Steve or for Rick?
Give an estimate of the revenue reductions?
We had to put a number to it. We have about,
What's the
Considering
reductions?
we've never done any revenues thus far, speculation, if you have a playground summer camp, combined total income could be $48,000, maybe between the two parks, not just one.
So there's a reduction of revenue that could,
Not current revenue.
Not
There's
current
no-
revenue.
There's no,
Okay, anticipate.
there's
Thank you.
nothing there.
yes,
It's zero right now.
the fee schedule is something that is in discussions now. There will be fees within those programs next year, and I think Licky spoke, we're in the 40,000 range with an estimation of that. And I would say the bulk would be in Barney, but it's still, if we had to guess, I'd say $18,000, give or take.
thank you.
If I could, I think summarize, you're essentially reducing the department head budget from 442 down to 380.
Well, part of that 442, and some of the other things that were reduced was, there was also, in that original 442 line, there was repairs to the pools and.
There was a lot of,
programs, right?
in that original, if I may.
Yep.
In that, the 442, David, there's a lot of increases there in a lot of different lines to really bring it up to what is needed for that department. As simple as office supplies, straight down through lifeguard chairs, more intense things. There was like 34,000 alone just in the pool operation line. Program lines, monies were increased in these lines throughout. So that's what that big number is. So now coming back to this level funded, you're basically pulling some monies out of those areas there. If you're closing down a pool, you're not going to need as many as those supplies that we anticipated. You're still chipping away at the stone, trying to get things done that need to be done safety-wise and structure-wise. So it's kind of taking a dartboard and throwing a dart at it and saying, okay, let's fix this now, and logically go through the whole process over time.
If Roy Pool were to be, by the end of this evening, added back on to the budget, would be some part of that $62,000 reduction?
I'm not sure I understand
I
the
don't know.
question.
From your department head budget down to the amount you've just discussed is 62,000.
So it would increase. To answer that question, if I understand it correctly, yes, it would go back up.
Well, but not all $62,000 to your original submission.
If I can explain a little bit.
Go ahead, thank you.
When we're talking about the pools, the parks are in disrepair, I think everyone knows that and has seen them. And part of that original 442, if you go and look at the buildings outside of barn, pool, et cetera, in other words, there was consideration for repairs there. There's the pavilion at Roy, there was consideration, there's holes in the roof. Those were part of that 442. So when we get down to the 380, you've already discussed that we are not going to improve some of what I'm going to call dilapidated structures that we have at the parks. And so you get down to that 380, which is kind of close to last year's budget, less that we're closing Roy Pool because you can't have Roy Pool going unless you invest in repairing the pool. It was losing 3 inches or 6 inches a day?
6,600 gallons of water a day.
A day. last year. That's how big the leaks are in the pool. So that's where that process came. But what we're saying here is that obviously the 442 was that original thing of let's try and nip away at repairing some, that wasn't tearing down a structure, that's just repairing some of the existing structures. And a CIP item for the pools was both pools do need repair, Roy especially. And if we were to go to a zero-based budget, you wouldn't be repairing any of those structures, which is, once again, I don't think you're taking care of your investment, but the second piece is you'd be closing down the pool program at Roy, which then, of course, you would be talking about that revenue piece, because the commission was going forward with a parks fee for those programs.
So, let me try another summary. If we, by the end of this evening, if we really wanted to keep the pool and the other facilities operational for next year, you'd really have to go back to the budget you submitted.
If we had to, and I'm sure I'll speak for Rick.
I just wanted a ballpark estimate, and that's what you're saying,
I hear you.
just go back to the 442.
Hold on. It wouldn't be 442. It would be probably pretty close to cut 10,000 out of it, 12,000 out of it, something like that.
Correct.
That's what it would be, Dave. Because what we would do is cut out some other fixes here and there.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions? All right. Sue's not here. We'll go to police.
Sure. Chief and I discussed probably the best possible way to come up with the level funding. And the conclusion that we came to was to not fill a vacant position for the year. Not eliminate the position, but just not fill that position. And that would come out to 69,000. You have the
I don't have the exact number.
That was 75,000.
I believe it's 75,000. 74 something.
I got here 76.6.
Okay.
76.8. I mean 7. Excuse me.
Yeah, that was the basically
It's benefits, salary, everything across the board.
And then the other thing that we decided to do was to reduce the special duty wages by $40,000 on that.
Specialty, what line number is that?
The appropriate lines on the salary that are affected are also the FICA line, the Medicare line, the retirement line, the the unemployment compensation, workers' comp, and the benefits line.
Is that total?
That actually came out to be slightly over the amount of level funding. I think it was about 6,000.
Actually, it's 1372.
Okay, and what we chose to do with that, instead of putting it into the overtime line to cover for the what we'd have to cover to do it with the we had a discussion and believe that it can be done using the part-time officers, so we'd be saving on overtime.
For the vacant position that's not being filled, utilize part-time officers to wrap them in to fill that versus on overtime when possible. Again, we have contractual obligations, but the thrust would be to use part-time officers to fill that void.
And then special duty wages goes down to 44,500.
Correct.
Correct.
Did you say that's 40 what?
44,500.
44,500.
Right. And the actual effect on the because the wages were frozen, and in the communications, the total effect is actually 1372 below.
Chief, what is the, if I call, I'm sorry.
No, sorry.
On your, on the revenue side for details, is that what that is, special duty wages?
That's details, yes.
Okay, on the revenue side, what's the corresponding reduction?
It would be simply used back, it wouldn't be taxed. You wouldn't pay a tax on the line of 84,000. The property tax would be based off of the 40,000 or 45,000.
No, in other words, currently we appropriate 84.5.
Correct.
But we anticipate 130,000 under revenue,
Okay.
special details, which offsets the taxes. So if you're reducing your detail
Correct.
appropriations, what's the corresponding reduction in revenues?
That money will still be coming into the town, accomplishing the same items as paying the details, as it currently does. So I guess I'm not understanding your question.
I kind of get it, if you don't mind. Essentially, when an officer goes and does some of those details, and I take it where he's being paid by whatever contractors is utilizing him. So obviously that revenue, you receive the revenue to pay that fee. You're looking for that offsetting
Comes into the general fund.
and so
It's like
you-
$1.60, according to this, for every dollar we bill out. So if we're reducing what we bill out in half, half of our revenue goes away.
That's not correct. If we bill out, the 40,000 is simply to get us started in this revolving account.
Okay, that wasn't mentioned. Okay, so you're gonna do a revolving
It's a
account?
revolving, absolutely.
Okay.
It's a revolving
I
account, so
understand
it's not a reduction there.
Okay,
What is it? That's a.
we got you.
Lack of a better word, a startup cost to get us into the budget cycle, and then we continue to roll that through. If we work $160,000 in details, that money will still come into the town, even though
Okay, so
we haven't budgeted.
Currently in the budget, you're talking special detail, I assume.
Yes.
If you look at the revenue, what was the original budget, department head budget for special detail? 90, and the revenue, though, is less, is
120.
more than that, 120.
Right.
So it's not a one-to-one ratio because other lines are impacted, FICA, Medicare, so it's in the budget, but you're not seeing it all in one line either.
So then would we see a corresponding reduction in FICA and all of those others when we take special details out?
I think she did that today.
That would be all paid out of the special detail account.
So the fire department's cuts were basically in personnel, right? I mean, the police department.
Easy.
Police.
Not anymore.
I read them all mixed up.
Whoa.
Yeah, we need a
I
new
know
chief,
it's
he
gonna
just
be
had
a
a heart
rough
attack.
night, but, yes, personnel and
Any questions?
Just a process, since I'm new to the board, I assumed there'd be a separate action by this board to set up the revolving account.
that would have to,
It has to be voted at town
Town
meeting
meeting.
Town meeting.
as a special article.
Special article, thank you.
All right, well, do we have the handouts for,
We do. You have fire and EMS, fire and EMS.
pass this out?
Yep, just keep it going. And you'll notice on fire, in order to get it to fit on one page, I hid the 2009 columns.
you know what, pass one more down to the chief. No, should be good now.
You got it, Dave?
Anyone else want them over there?
Yeah.
Okay, keep them going.
One more time.
You don't wanna think like I wasted paper here.
Carl, the chief took your budget and looked at it.
No.
He doesn't want my budget.
All set?
All right.
Okay, moving down, starting at the overtime. Overtime line was reduced to $110,000, a $20,000 reduction. That is line
If you just, the last,
41,300.
thank you.
Took all my tools.
Need 'em?
That's okay.
I have some more.
Chief's got one, I'll take it.
Moving down to 44,150. Clothing and uniforms. That was reduced to $10,500, $2,500 reduction. Employee development was reduced down to $2,000, a $1,000 reduction. Physical examinations reduced down to $7,055. Training expenses reduced down to $7,505. Operating supplies was reduced down to $9,035, $2,000 reduction. Hose expenses was reduced down to 3,540, that's line 47850. 4,790 SCBA equipment and repairs, 8,475. Turnouts, 4,790, $5,000 reduction, 18,000. Furniture and fixtures, 4,440, $2,050. That was a $2,700 reduction. Line 52433, Opticom maintenance and repairs, 2,500. Line 52435, alarm repairs and maintenance, 6,000. It's a $1,000 reduction. New radios, 52445, was a $5,000 reduction to $5,000. Line 53345, small equipment maintenance, test and repairs, a $2,800 reduction to $10,000. And line 55535, station repairs, was reduced by $5,000 to $12,565. And that came to a total of $2,384,811. Then moving over to the EMS side. We had 3 reductions. Line 44330, physical examinations, is $3,525. It was a $1,500 reduction. 47,950, turnouts, was a $4,000 reduction to 6,150. 50245 radios was a $2,500 reduction to 2,700. And that totaled $8,000 worth of reductions. And what we did was our reimbursement to the general fund, which is normally $40,000, we increased that to $46,485, which in essence is it's increasing the revenue by $6,485.
6,485.
Okay, let's repeat that one more time.
We made $8,000 worth of reductions.
Right.
we increased the reimbursement to the general fund from $40,000 to $46,485
It says 48.
So you're taking from the ambulance fund, throwing it there.
into the fire
Because the
side.
ambulance fund, ambulance service, I take it, takes this much in revenues plus that extra money that you're speaking about.
Correct. The EMS budget is, in essence, going down 15.
Would that have an effect, because, just a question, would that have an effect, because I've always considered the revolving account, with the ambulance, is that ambulance fund, is that it self-generates, that's, we never have, when next ambulance comes up, we don't have an issue as far as finding funds to purchase it. Will that have an effect over the span?
No, because the bottom line EMS budget is $1,515 less than what was proposed.
Okay,
So there's less money coming out of the EMS.
How is the budget running to receivables, though, for ambulance billing right now, Chief?
Right now, we're on track for this budget cycle. We get a report that Medicare was going to pay us an extra, we call it a regional compensation. At some point in time, they're going back in time to the first of the year, up to 2%. So we'll see some extra revenue there. And because of the volume of calls that we're doing, I believe we'll stay on track.
And you're buying an ambulance out of this fund next year, correct?
Correct. And I believe that's
$190,000?
And I believe from what Janice was telling me that's approximately, we have about $200,000 in the fund right now above what we're currently operating with.
Calling it close.
Yes.
Yeah, but that ambulance, we just bought one a year or two ago, and it was like 160 something thousand.
165,000
Right.
on that one.
Right.
And what's good news, I guess, on that one, with going with the heavier chassis, the maintenance charges on that particular type of vehicle is significantly less than the old Ford type chassis. I'm hoping that once we go with another chassis like that we could probably get an extra year or two out of the cycle, so we're not replacing vehicles as often as we are.
And if I could, the caveat to that, because the reduction in the overtime is there may be instances where they have to run, a few men down or potentially close a station on a day if they can't afford to get the coverage.
Right. The big impact items on that was the overtime. We have training expenses, of course. We like to try to provide training for our firefighters to get the proper certifications. That may be impacted. When we talk about hose expenses, we cut that significantly. So when hose lines break or they fail to test, we need to get them replaced. We're kind of gambling on that one. As far as turnouts goes, that line was significantly cut. We have a number of sets that are reaching the end of its life by NFPA standards, which is about 10 years. And we're just going to be replacing as many sets as we can, realizing that some sets will not be in standard. We reduced the vehicle maintenance line significantly, kind of going on the thought that somehow we'll get a replacement truck in the coming year.
In the budget process, the ambulance, I know it was a CIP item, but to be reimbursed from here, and it's not in here, should we just move the vehicle into EMS, since that's who's funding it?
Is it in our revenue side?
In the past, I believe it was a special article. It was an article, and it was passed by the voters to approve the purchase.
Yeah,
and we would show that in that area.
That one was a unique one. That was a replacement because of an accident, and we had to pay for it and get reimbursed from EMS. But you can budget in EMS for the ambulance and take it out of general fund.
What did we do the last time?
Last one was an article. It was an article.
Right,
Yeah.
but that was a unique situation where we had to be reimbursed. It was purchased in 1 year and reimbursed
I believe
the
the
next year.
last one was like that also. The last one we did purchase was like that. 2008.
Have a question?
You should put it in revenue.
Phil?
Yeah, Chief, you mentioned the hose. So, basically, has all the hose that you've been planning to change over or replace the new hose, has that all been done?
Most of the hand lines have been done. Majority of the large diameter hose, the 4-inch hose, has been done. We still need to replace some of those lengths. And a lot of the forestry hose is antiquated right now, so we need to work on that's the next group of hose that we're focusing on, and that may have to wait. We lost quite a few lengths of hose, forestry hose this year because they were burnt through at the fires we've had. Again, that hose may have to wait.
Okay, so, though what I'm just trying to do is get an idea of the money that you have in the hose line, what that kind of can equate to. I mean, usually when you do a repair, where you replace a section or you do a repair, I mean, I have no idea of, I just see a number, but I don't understand, I can't correlate that to.
For a 100-foot section of 4-inch hose, it runs about $1,100. So you're looking at 3 lengths of hose here. That is it.
Right, but I guess to do a repair, let's say, I mean, you'd have different reasons to repair a hose. You might have had something got damaged because maybe it got cut or run over or something, or the hose itself is bad where it can't hold the pressure.
Correct.
If it can't hold the pressure, obviously it's the entire hose. It's not just going to be a portion of it. But how do you how are the repairs done, I guess? Are the repairs, well, I guess to equate it, you know how if you run over your garden hose and you put a cut in it, you can put like a splice. I mean,
That's typically done if you get a hole in the hose and it's 15 feet from the end, or you can cut it, add a new coupling to it.
Okay.
If it's in the middle, you can cut it and add 2 couplings and get 2 shorter lengths of hose. So that is possible.
Those couplings, I mean,
they do come off.
But I mean, about how much do they cost? Is there an idea? I mean, are these $35 or $150 a couple?
Varies by diameter hose.
Yeah, it goes, but differs by diameter. The ones that we're using now are the lighter weight metals, and say for one end, I believe it costs around $200.
Okay, but I mean, we're capable of making those repairs. I mean,
we actually we use a vendor to do that because again they certify the connection.
Right, that's where I was going.
And we don't have the coupling equipment.
Thought you were doing it in the city.
We were going to the city. I know the city had angst over it just for that reason, for certifying it and time and efforts. And the city has helped us out in the past when we're in jam.
Okay, I'm going to try to move it along.
So the end result of that is a zero.
Okay.
A zero increase.
Any questions?
And I have on the EMS, if you can just explain to me the rationale on the reductions, because on the physicals, are we looking at less people or, but I mean, aren't the physical exams requirements that are mandatory?
Usually this line gets exhausted due to the fact that we have the part-time EMS members that work at night, and when that group of employees we have turnover in that group, we have to hire replacements, and that's when this line gets chewed down pretty fast. We're kind of going on the assumption that the employees that we have now are going to stay in the part-time status. We realize a few of them will leave.
And the turnouts are in the same rationale?
Well, not exactly. We have to replace our PPE on a regular basis. Instead of doing it all at once, we try to break it down annually. And by cutting into this, we may have sets of gear that don't meet standard.
And the radial line, the rationale on that one?
Again, looking for an area to cut.
Okay.
Right now, we're getting into a position where majority of our radios need new batteries. They're about 4 to 5 years old. Batteries only last 2 to 3 years old. And each battery costs about $125 a piece. We may not be able to replace batteries.
Okay. No, and I guess just, the reason why I'm asking the questions is because these are not just things that you would arbitrarily cut. I mean, even these cuts, I mean, we're still
Right.
hoping that we don't have issues.
Some of it was based on historical
Right.
expenditures and.
Right. Okay.
Any other
So-
questions?
I missed the opening when I was
Sorry.
upstairs. So this is not, the fire department is not a level funded budget,
The
correct?
The fire side is $6,485 over, which is offset by the increased revenue of $6,485.
You may have
Okay,
to,
so your total bottom line is
Is
incorrect
zero.
on the printout
Oh, I'm sorry.
because it wasn't adjusted. So it would be the line for total fire operations, not total for fire department, correct? Those two
correct, yeah, there's two lines.
numbers are different?
The correct line is 2384811.
Thank you. So that's a difference of 8,000?
That's what we're getting, yep.
So the total line is incorrect?
The total line is incorrect.
There are two bold lines at the bottom. The total for fire department is incorrect.
Can you give us a new number, please?
Huh?
Is it,
The correct number is above it, the
Right.
2384
okay, thank you.
811. And that's an increase of 8,000 over previous year, but you're trying to make that up in EMS, is that what I'm understanding?
No, that number's not, it should be 6,000.
Right, I think it was 8,000 by the time we get done.
Looks like an $8,000 difference when I subtract it from 2010 adopted.
All right, I think for the sake of time, I think that, you two could work, I
Yeah.
see where you're going with it.
Probably what would happen is that whole 8,000 reduction in EMS would go into the offsetting revenue versus
So,
just the 6,000.
in terms
So it
of-
would come out to a zero.
Right, I understand the premise to it, we can kind of clean that up, it's a couple of $1,000s off. Everybody okay with that? We'll move on. All right. Sue, that will be administration, you want to do that, or you want me to do it?
It's your budget now.
Okay. Sue and I met last week, let me just go to the page for you. Starting with town clerk, these are highlighted. You'll see printing and binding, and this was for, I believe, vital records.
Yes. Preservation of.
Preservation of vital records. Then if you go to the next page, which is auditing services, you'll see about a $5,000 decrease there. And Sue, if you can help me explain this one, but we know that the school district and the town share in terms of when we get an audit.
Same auditor,
Same auditor.
correct.
And
The school district decided not to do the after-employment benefits audit. Forget the official name, but anyway, the OPEB is an acronym, yes.
Say that again, please?
Post-employment benefits.
Okay, thank you.
And we had our first one done this year so that we didn't get an opinion on our audit. And the school decided not to have that done. Now, what do you do with that information? You get the audit, you find out that, the retirees who are the ones receiving our insurance rates are costing us an additional $190,000 a year in terms of premiums. So they do their actuarial study to come up with this number, but you don't budget for it, you don't do anything with it, except it's a requirement of GASB to do it. If you don't do it, then you will get an unqualified opinion on your audit, which is what the school chose to do rather than investing in the audit. Because nobody does anything with the number. They learn of the number, but they don't do anything with the number.
Does that have an effect on anything else?
They don't feel that it will affect, and it's showing in other towns too, it doesn't affect their ability to borrow or their rate to borrow, so
That has no
another
effect,
requirement.
no effect on the bonding?
Right, that's what they're finding.
This is one of those, should I say, federal mandates that you do things and
Gatsby
really
mandate.
doesn't.
This doesn't matter.
General Accounting
Yeah.
Standards Board.
Then you'll see in a slight decrease in line 48440, furniture and fixtures. The plan next year is to go forward with a more of a centralized revenue collection office to maximize efficiencies with the personnel that we have, and I'll elaborate that on a little bit later. If you can page forward and to other general government, and you'll see some modest decreases there, $200 in each line. It's about a little less than $3,000.
Yeah, it was a 10% reduction.
10% reduction. Next page, what we're looking to do here is to reduce a position, and that will result in about a $46,000 decrease in the budget. That is wages and applicable benefits. And that is the lion's share of it. And the thought process is that in terms of this whole revenue collection piece, with having less people, we need to make some adjustments to how it runs upstairs, so that we can be more efficient, so that we can have 4 or 5 people, doing that work, so that they're not in different parts of the building, and trying to consolidate those resources. And this building doesn't always lend itself to that, so we're looking to, as you see in the furniture and fixtures line, try to, I don't know if you've ever been to some other towns where they have it, and you literally have like 3 different windows, and the people are all cross-trained, and they can, whether it be tax collection, town clerk business, you name it, they can pretty much do it all. And that's what we're striving for.
I think Manchester's like that. When you go downstairs, you have basically your counter, and there's 3 spaces.
Yeah, I know I work in Bedford, and they have something very, very similar. So that's where we landed on the administration side, and that gets us to a level fund. Any questions? All right, we've kind of done a kind of an overview. I just wanted to kind of talk about what we did with CIP as well. And if you recall, we reduced our road plan budget by $1 million. In addition to that, when we did the ARA funding for the drainage improvements on South Mass, which is currently going on, hopefully soon to be paved, this week, hopefully.
Is it this week, Carl?
Hopefully tomorrow.
Really?
Hopefully tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Press release. That's also a chunk of money that's paying for that. So but we've got 3 pieces of equipment, and again, I think Selectman Pierce talked about one of them, and that was the 10-wheel dump truck, which there was some discussion initially about the cost to replace that dump truck. And again, help me, I think 160-ish or 160. Oh, it's more than that? The 10-wheeler is more than that. It's
214.
214. There was discussion about replacing the body and trying to get some more years out of that. It appears that's an issue that's going to have to be discussed, I believe. We have the solid waste truck, which is another item, and we also have a fire engine, which I think is going to require us to have some discussions. So I just wanted to let's not forget about those are 3 major capital items that we have talked about for the last few years that I think we're gonna have to talk a little bit more about. But before we get started, is there, it's not so much my place to tell us how we're going to proceed, but I thought that what we would do is to, let's have some, general discussions about where are we at in terms of reaching this. I know that there has been, some discussion, whether it be Parks and Rec or some of these other departments, about some of the decisions that, where do we want to go. We have to keep in mind, though, that whatever we leave or whatever we don't cut in one area, we have to correspondingly take from another area. And I just wanted everybody, to kind of know that. So hypothetically, if we revisit Parks and Rec, we have to then go back and take a look at another department, or, department of departments, and say, okay, you have to then, if we're going to achieve that result. Couple of good news, which I should have mentioned it earlier, was that we did get our health insurance. We had budgeted initially for a 15% increase in health insurance, and it came in far less than that. I think 6% and 7% respectively for both our collective bargaining units and our non-affiliated employees. So that was some good news.
And we haven't received official confirmation
right.
on that. Yeah, that should be, it was supposed to be mailed out today, so we'll probably get it Wednesday. And then the board will have to accept those.
Right. So that was some pleasant news for a change. So what I'd like to do, and again, does anybody else have any other ideas on how you want to proceed? Any other suggestions? I would assume we'll just go through each one, and I think what will happen is when we do that, we're going to have to now, reach some consensus as to how we're going to proceed. So, since it's number one on our list,
Confused, I thought isn't that what we just did?
we did.
They
But
all
what I'm
came in
trying
at
to
a-
say, yeah,
Oh, go ahead.
I got the sense that there were some that wanted to have more discussion on some things. I mean, and there was also, in the sake of, say, DPW, $40,000 was taken out to achieve it based upon the notion that we would support the 10-wheel dump truck. So I think you have to take a look at this whole thing and say, okay, if that's the case, then we move forward. If that's not the case, then we have to have discussion, because if you are not going to replace the 10-wheel dump truck, then you have to add back the 40, and that's where I'm going.
Right.
CIP might be a place to
You
go,
got it.
since that's not level funded. and
Because CIP is still part of the budget.
It is,
Right.
and it's not level funded
Right.
at this point in time.
Right. Yes, Steve?
And I'd like to speak a little bit to this, and I realize that we all went for this level funded budget for each department, and I think there are some issues for me anyway, when I look at this, that not everything is exactly proportionate within each department and how it works and how it affects those particular departments. That's expecting that everything goes forward and we're all set. I think and I'll be quite honest, and I've talked to others regarding the Parks and Rec. We've started from a point of things were dilapidated, and what 40,000 means in that budget versus what 40,000 means in another budget. And part of it is how many people it affects within the community and how it affects the community as a whole. I think there's some issues we got to look at that, is that if we can be more creative and find some pieces that make sense. I mean, I personally, when we talk about closing down a park or closing down a pool, I think I want to take a closer look at that when we talk about the amount of money that it's going to cost to keep it open.
All right. If it's okay with you, let's put that in the parking lot just for now.
Okay.
And let's go to CIP, because we are not level funded in the CIP piece. And if I could, let's just go to this top page, and we're way at the bottom. And if I also, the debt service, we have no control over.
Right.
Okay, so that we can't change that. Some folks have said, can we refinance? We use the New Hampshire revolving loan fund. We get phenomenal rates. We can't refinance our debt. It's about as low as it's going to get at this point. And I should also let folks know out there that as a community, we have an extremely low debt burden, and that is historical. It's a philosophy that has been part of previous boards of selectmen, and Phil, you've been on the board for many years, and it has it's been a very conservative approach with regard to taking on debt. And so I think from that perspective,
Basically pay as you go.
yeah. So as we go down further, let's talk about our CIP, and we'll go to the first one, and that's land and improvements. And as you can see, and for this year, we had an adopted budget of roughly $1.9 million. Okay, it's $1,899,414, and we ended up with a draft of $1,559,524. That was arrived at predominantly in terms of a cut to our road program of $1 million. So that was the lion's share of that. Then when we look at machinery and equipment, last year in CIP, we had $246,200 in our CIP budget. Now, I need to explain why. Ordinarily, we would keep it in our budget, but we decided to take it out of our budget and put it as a special article and bond it. And there were 3 vehicles on there, and it was close to $1 million, and that was rejected by the voters last March. So that was the reason why that is the case, and that is now why you will see that number has increased. That is the lion's share of this increase, and so it went from $246,000 to a draft Board of Selectmen budget of $1.3 million. Buildings, we had an adopted budget of $92,000 roughly, and we are at $50,000 for this draft. And under improvements of land, we were at $247,678, and we are at $254,000. So that's almost a push as well. So the big issue here is machinery, equipment, and vehicles, and we're talking about an increase of about $1.1 million. And I can tell you that we have a fire engine, and again, we deal with big numbers, so I'm going to round some of these off. I believe we had it around $550,000. We had a solid waste vehicle, 380 or something like that. 350. Okay, 350. And then we had the 10-wheel dump truck, and I'm told that was 200 and change, right?
I think it was 204.
I have it.
214 now. I mean,
Okay.
it's actually up now.
So that's kind of where we're at, and in essence, we are about $681,000 above our target if we were to keep it level, from last year. Now, the other thing that I wanted to also make mention of is if you can turn to the next page, there are some things that we did when you look at, say, the bottom line. And if you can go to the middle of the page, folks, we had article number 10 was the Ara drainage project. That was $114,000, of which we were getting 50% reimbursement from the feds or the state. We had the Barnard land acquisition at $360,000. We had the Goffstown Main Street and the Milfoil and the Maskey Lake for $23,000. So I draw your attention to the last number, which is $223,038. That is what we are over.
Plus whatever
Plus-
those placeholders will be.
Right.
Which placeholder?
Special article placeholders for
Oh.
bargaining agreement?
223 over
Is that,
the 2010 budget,
Right.
and that's 1.1%.
does that, when you're talking the 114 and there was that 57 split, is that
I'm sorry. Can you,
when we were talking the drainage project, which was 114, and we said 57 of it was going to be reimbursed?
Yeah.
Is that 223 is that using the 57,000 number, or is that using the 114?
using the 114.
So it'd be actually 57, wouldn't we go 57 less?
No, as we're looking at appropriations,
That's
correct
the
me if I'm
gross
wrong.
appropriations.
Everything is always
Even though
gross
it's being
appropriation.
offset, we're not going,
That's in the revenue side.
okay.
So, that leaves us to a couple of different things. Again, I think we need to have some discussions about this, the equipment. And again, I guess we'll start off with the solid waste vehicle. We have two. One of them is in a backup status. One of them is a frontline vehicle. That frontline vehicle is scheduled to be, I'm sorry, the backup vehicle was scheduled to be replaced, and we're putting the other one back to.
We have three. One's a backup.
Right.
And then one on solid waste, one on recycling.
Yeah.
And what we normally would do is, a new vehicle coming in would go on solid waste. The current solid waste vehicle would move to recycling, and then that truck would move to backup. The one that's being worked the hardest is the one that we typically give the new truck to, which is solid waste, refuse.
Now we had one incident already this year whereby that one of the trucks went down, and we had to, I guess, get assistance from a private entity to help pick up.
Well, they were both down.
They were both
The
down,
backup
right.
down, the main one and the back, and the
Right.
backup was down.
So that's where we're at with that. The 10-wheel dump truck, again, if you just want to, Carl, you want to give us a little bit of a rundown on that one. That's another vehicle that we didn't replace last year. It's been, I guess, nursed along. Can it get nursed along longer?
Well, this was the one I brought some photos into the board. We have two 10-wheelers in the department, and obviously, year-round, they are the first trucks out of the yard, whether it's snowstorm or construction season. They have a much larger capacity than the six-wheelers in the fleet. This particular truck, the body, one of the corner posts that supports the whole body is failed to the point where, it's rotted away to the point where we can no longer repair it. So, we're just not sure how much longer we can keep going. If you look at the truck from the back, the whole body kind of lists to one side. And they've tried to weld it and shore it up, and they just.
Okay, so our options are
Replace the body on the back.
replace the body at around
which
40
was
to 50,000,
40,000.
right? Or replace the truck.
Right.
All right.
Question?
Yeah.
What else needs to be done besides the body on that?
Mechanically, the chassis, I mean, obviously, if you come look at the truck, it's old and it's been running in salt, but mechanically, we don't have many issues with the truck and chassis. It's the body on the back is where most of the problems are. The truck and chassis are aged to the point where they could start to be a real problem any time. It's got a lot of hours on it and a lot of miles. But that's not where we're having issues right now. It's all in the body.
I guess the reason why I asked that question is, if we were to replace the body,
How many more years can we get out of this thing? Right.
well, I mean, I hate to spend $40,000 on a body and then find out we gotta spend $10,000 on something else.
Yeah. But, you get into a truck with as many hours as that vehicle has, you just never know. I mean, transmission and all those things. But Mark has no reason to believe that there's an imminent failure.
All right. I mean, has there been discussions about just, spending $40,000 to replace the body on? How old is this thing? 8 to 10 years old with X amount of hours? I mean, I probably have it right here. Hold on.
It's probably more like 12 years old.
What about the engine?
Again, it's already past the point where an engine manufacturer would recommend you change the engine, but we have no reason to believe that it's an imminent failure, other than just a sheer number on the hour meter.
Well, what is the will of the board? How do you want to proceed? Continue with keeping it in CIP?
I would say replace the body.
I only question as we go forward with these conversations, because this was a vehicle that was, we put off last year by going through the article, then we pushed it off this year. Are we looking at the same thing next year again? I mean, I understand we're trying to get through this year, but I'd like to know what kind, what we're.
2012,
I'm
you're
trying-
looking at another dump truck. This is not a 10-wheeler, it's a Sterling dump. That's up for, you have the VACON, the vacuum truck that's used to clean out all the culverts, and that's at $400,000.
'Cause
You have a grader. There's a lot of equipment
I'd-
backing up on the.
I'd like to make a comment if I could, please, because this is where we started a little bit, that we've always talked that we get these budgets, and then next thing you know, we're talking about either we make reductions to operations, we make reductions to operations, and next thing you know, what's left at the end of this process, and are we getting close to that?
Help me understand what you said. I don't.
Yeah, I'm just comparing, I'm just saying salaries and operation within the budget, and so we always go towards equipment, machinery, et cetera, and that's where we're going again. And eventually we'll be looking at, we'll have drivers and trucks or police or fire trucks that no one's, that aren't gonna be as usable, though we're trying to stretch them. I'm just wondering how far that stretch is going to be.
But I think that was part of the process. When we started this, we had asked both the fire chief and Public Works Director to look at alternatives so that what would be possible to not have to replace. And when we saw the solid waste, the Packer needs to be replaced. There's nothing that can be done with that. The 10-wheeler, on the other hand, we replace the body, everything else should.
No, and I'm agreeing, I'm just concerned that when we get out 2 and 3 more years out there, how's it going to be piled on with the other ones? That's my concern.
Well,
In other words, I don't expect next year to be a banner year either.
next year on the DPW side for vehicles is far worse because
That's my point.
you have the VACON truck is a significant expense. You have another dump truck. There is
when you
a
do this,
grader.
Essentially what you were saying is that when we do this, we're not asking for 1 year, we're asking for 2 or 3 years out on this truck at this point.
Yeah, I think if you make this move, I think you really need to.
Or you're gonna push something else.
I
out
will
here.
say this, is that I think if you can get to 2014, I'm not trying.
I know,
I'm
I
not-
just
I'm
think-
not
but
making a
but-
joke about it.
I know,
I mean,
I know, but
if
this-
you can get there, and that's not to say that things aren't going to happen then, but that's when it starts to get a little better. But 2012, 2011, 2012, 2013 are pretty tough. It gets a little bit better when you get to 2014, 2015. So you really better be getting 4 or 5 years out of this body. That's all I'm saying, for it to be worthwhile.
I guess the concern that I have is we're looking at 20% of the vehicle. We're putting 20% of a new vehicle into this body. And we're talking here to go past 2014. I asked about the engine. Carl says that it's past the hours for replacement, that the manufacturer warrants replacement. I guess, how many hours a year do we put on this, and where are we gonna be? And we're looking at, when I get to the point of a 12-year-old vehicle, and I have to put 20% into a vehicle for a body, I'm not of the mindset that, gee, the vehicle is fixed for 3 years. I mean, we're looking at a rear end, we're looking at a transmission, we're looking at an engine, we're looking at other systems that are in that vehicle. I can't sit here and say that I expect that all those systems, all those things to remain operational for 3 years. I mean, you're looking at 2 years from now, or next year from now, if we have to put an engine in that, I mean, now we've done 40,000 or 20% into it, plus we've done repairs to that. I mean, we repaired the rear end, we repaired other things in the meantime.
All right.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm hearing you.
That's my point.
We have that. We, as Selectman Campusano said, the garbage collection vehicle, there really aren't any options with regard to that one. So that one is not, we don't have a plan B on that one. So you could make an argument that in terms of pecking order, the solid waste vehicle goes higher because we don't have options on that one. We have an option on the dump truck. And then there's the fire truck, and again, let's have the conversation before we start making any decisions, because those are three. And let me just get to that one in our CIP. That one is engine number 5, right? Right?
Right, the pumper tanker would replace not just one vehicle, but 2 vehicles.
Right.
You have engine 5 and tanker 5.
Right.
Engine 5 is the 1992 E1 pump, and the tanker is a 1989 International tanker.
Okay. So let's, there has been some questions asked by a couple members of the budget committee, so I might as well ask them so I'm prepared for Saturday. But we know that we did some, was it 6 that we did work on?
Engine 1.
Engine 1, I'm sorry. Engine 1, we did a few $1,000s worth of repairs, and
Turned out to be more like $5,000.
I apologize.
Yeah.
Okay, $5,000 for repairs, and that's a 1994 vehicle, so it's 16 years old. And in terms of that one, that's getting us by, right?
It's getting us by right now.
It's a backup engine, or
It's a primary backup. We have no backup vehicles in our fleet at this
Okay.
time. So what do we have on the floor is what's needed to respond.
okay. So the big issue here is, what is the plan B for engine 5?
Plan B for engine 5.
Right.
Well, first of all, the truck's nearly 20 years old. It's out of service.
1992, right?
It's out of service right now. The reason being is the pump has a significant crack in its manifold. The pump that's in that vehicle is obsolete. We cannot get a replacement on that other than purchasing a new pump and retrofitting it into this vehicle.
At a cost of
About $60,000.
60? 60?
60.
Okay.
So there's your option there, and when you put that pump in that vehicle, it really doesn't address the other issues that are currently at hand. With you get some issues with the motor, with an aging motor on it, transmission issues, electrical issues that we're constantly trying to chase.
Okay, let me just stop you for a second
Okay.
here. A fire engine is not like someone's, car, okay?
Right.
And what is the lifespan? What is the typical lifespan of a fire engine in a community such as Goffstown, in the United States? I mean, is it 15 years, 20 years, 25?
If you buy a quality vehicle, you can get 15 to 20 years out of it.
Okay. I want to go back to what you were, again, we're charged with making these decisions just like we would, at what point do you spend thousands of dollars to fix your own car and then not knowing what's the next thing that could happen and the next thing. So I want to get all these issues filled out on the table in terms of all these pieces of equipment.
Actually, Selectman Camposano had me contact some vendors to discuss refurbishing vehicles versus purchasing new ones.
Okay.
So when we look at refurbishing vehicles, there is an NFPA standard on that also, NFPA 1911. And the first thing they say, if you have a vehicle over 20 years, they do not recommend using it for primary response, period. It's not there. You could use it possibly as a reserve, but when it comes down to refurbishing, they say do not refurbish a vehicle that's over 20 years of age. So we're at the cusp on this vehicle in particular, engine 5. So I contacted Valley Fire Equipment, and they came down and assessed not only engine 5 but engine 1 and tanker 5.0 was there. So the first thing that they said, they looked at the vehicles and they said, first of all, we don't think it's in the best interest of the fire department or the town to refurbish any of these vehicles. I said, well, we need to look at this anyway. So they went vehicle by vehicle, and for engine 5, they need to replace the pump, significant body repair and paint for the rear part of the vehicle and the cab area. Significant electrical lighting work needed to be done.
Can you? I apologize, because when you do say significant, it
basically replacing the wiring.
Okay,
harness?
it's a big vehicle.
It's a
I
big,
mean,
from bumper to bumper, you're
All
replacing.
the wiring?
You got it. Because to try to figure out where it's having a problem right now, it'd be more cost effective just to rewire everything, to current standards. And that's what NFPA basically mandates. Replacing the seating in the cab, rear springs on this vehicle are gone, we'd have to replace that, and obviously put new tires on it. So they came up with a grand total of $170,000 for this refurbishment.
With the bump.
With a pump. Now, when you talk about refurbing a pump, you're looking at 5, maybe 7 years of service out of it. Was interesting, I looked back in the town report for 1991 town report, Article 17, when they authorized to purchase this vehicle, the vehicle new cost $168,000. Put it in perspective. And this vehicle was actually refurbished once before, back in the 90s, I believe. The big question is the variable that we don't know exactly is the newer pumps, the newer fire pumps, require a certain amount of horsepower to make them operate effectively to rating. This particular truck, when it was built, was given a 250 horsepower pump, 250 horsepower engine in it to supply this pump. Most of the newer equipment that's out there now that you get off either demo stock unit or a new truck that you build, and it has usually a 385 to 425 horsepower engine in it. So the variable is, I'm trying to confirm whether we can put a new pump in this thing and have it rated to capacity.
What size are you, a 1250 pump?
A 1250 pump in it right now.
No, I'm saying, what would you be looking to replace it with?
Another 1250.
All right. So suffice to say, it's the new pump is $60K, and then with all the other not upgrades, replacements to get it going, 170 on the high end. How much time does that buy us?
Again, it would take about 6 months to do this work on the truck, and it would buy you anywhere from 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
Again, the reason why we have to replace so much of it is that as the guys from Valley Fire were going over it, they're saying a lot of this equipment and wiring and everything they're looking at this truck is obsolete. It's not like you can just get it off the shelf. So it's more cost effective for them instead of trying to manufacture or rebuild what needs to be replaced in this truck, just to buy new and try to retrofit it.
So we'd be spending about, I don't know, my math isn't great, but I probably around 35% of the cost of a new one to
anywhere from 35 to 40%.
Right, to get another 5 to 7 years out of it. Okay. All right. Okay, so.
And also to put it in perspective too, if we're looking at doing a pumper tanker for the $550,000, the tanker, they just said, well, straight up, we can't refurbish it. It's beyond the 20-year lifespan. But to replace a similar tanker to what we have, they could build one for $250,000. So if you do the 250 plus 170, and you're in the area of
the other thing that I need to throw out here is we have some offsetting funds in our capital reserve fund, $142,000. Should we purchase an engine, that would offset the cost. So if we went with one that was more customized, it might be in the neighborhood of around $550. If we went with more of a demo, it might be $50,000 or $75,000 less than that. So keep that in mind.
Just a quick question. When we were talking about the refurb, and we understood the 60 for the pump, and then we spoke in a general figure of 100,000. Do you actually have a breakdown of when someone looked at it saying, here's how much we were looking for to do the wiring or the paintwork or anything like that? If I could get a copy of that before next week, this weekend, I'd appreciate it.
All right. What is in terms of prioritization? I've heard one vehicle really doesn't have any options, and that's the garbage, the solid waste truck. The dump truck has an option, and then the fire engine has an option. Between the two vehicles that have the option, in my opinion, again, I'm curious to see what everyone else's opinion is, but in my opinion, I would put the second priority as the fire truck, and then the dump truck would be the third priority, just based upon what I have heard, and if you're going to take risks, and that's just me. What does everybody else? I'm not saying they're all great scenarios, but is that fair to say, or?
I would agree.
Would you
If
make
you,
that one?
I guess if I had to prioritize the three vehicles that we're talking about, garbage truck number one, fire engine number two, dump truck number three, based upon everything that I've heard. That's just me. I'm curious as to what the other selectmen think after hearing.
Quick question, the one thing we may have asked, Carl, on your Packer, what is it is it the mechanical engine that is no longer
Yes.
any good, or is it the
It's the engine,
hydraulic?
the transmission, and a lot of electrical hydraulic issues. It's kind of everything.
So replacement engine and chassis, would that?
No, well, I think there's problems everywhere in the old backup vehicle. It seems like every time we turn the key, there's something wrong with it. I mean, sometimes it's the electrical system, sometimes it's the hydraulic system, the motor has issues, the transmission has issues. I mean, it's kind of, that truck, it's kind of everything. So it's not so much the two that are out on the street every day, we don't have a dependable backup. And of course, the ones on the street are getting tired too. A lot of problems with the recycling truck.
Any other, David, you want to?
I'm next up. In my point of view, we have no options on the vehicles. My bottom line is they all stay in the CIP. Selectman Devanza covered it, Selectman Fournier covered my reasons. We delay it for another year. This adds a burden to the future years, which are already overburdened. And I'm not going to stretch that out to 2014.
We would have to find $223,000 though.
Somewhere else. Thank you.
I mean, that's
If you want a level budget.
Anyone
concerns.
else? Steve, I'm sorry, okay, Steve,
Go ahead.
Phil?
I guess, though, what I heard from the chief was the assessment of the fire truck, the engine. We're looking at 30 to 35% replacement. In other words, we're going to be putting in 35 to 40%, I'm sorry, 35 to 40% of that vehicle. The dump truck, we're looking at 40%, roughly about the same amount, because we're looking at 214.
25%.
No, 40 times 5 is 200.
Yeah, that'll be 20%.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, the garbage truck, obviously, garbage and recycling, we have no alternative. When you get to the other two, I mean, the difference is, we're looking at 35 to 40%, we're looking at 6 or 7 years. There is no way we're gonna put $40,000 into the dump truck and get 6 or 7 years out of it. So, I guess, comparatively speaking, looking at it from that perspective, they're about the same. But if you had to prioritize the vehicles, I mean, it's tough putting a priority. You have a fire, an engine, put out a fire, which could be, life. You also have a dump truck that does plowing, and it's critical. And if you don't get the roads plowed, you have a potential for some loss there. So, I mean, it's a tough call. But, I mean, I tend to agree with
your order of the solid waste or recycling, the fire engines, and the dump truck, but the dump truck and the fire engine are, I mean, you know, they're so close. They're so close, because I know that we're not gonna sit here and we're not gonna put $40,000 in that vehicle, and 3 years later, that's all we put into that vehicle.
Question.
Steve?
I don't, and hear me out a little bit, because I understand the trucks and we're at the 223 and we're talking about the big vehicles. I'm not quite sure what's in my land and improvements at 1.5.
You've got
I
the
have the road
detail.
I don't,
Have the detail.
no, I
Go
don't.
back.
On where?
Yep.
In the back.
In the back.
Oh, how far back? I apologize.
Right after the sewer, if you want to go back.
Then I'm missing a page, because all I have is the sewer.
No, keep going. Then go past EMS, and then you have your,
Oh, I mean, that's my last page is
no,
the
no,
sewer.
no, go
My last
forward
page is sewer.
from there.
Oh, I apologize.
The fifth page from the back.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
It's just-
I don't mind recapping it. I mean, this is, it's an important point when we talk about this. Our cemetery expansion, which have DPW is gonna be doing that. We saved over $100,000 by having DPW personnel and equipment start that cemetery expansion. So $10,000 is in there essentially for mostly materials. We took $1 million off the road reclamation budget. And then we also had in the improvements at Elm and Pleasant Street, which I believe was in anticipation of a possible grant. Am I correct in that, the 50,000, is that
Yes.
planning? Right. So, everything else has really kind of been already removed. You know, another option that's out there is to make, you know, we did this last year, we put special articles. And I know that we had a big debate last year, because I remember, Chief, we went back and forth, should we put that fire engine separately? You know, and maybe that's something that we do, we take it out of CIP, we leave the other two vehicles in, or we do, and then we go that route. It's another option. I mean, ultimately, folks have, you know, the business case, you know, we've talked about it here. It's like, you know, do you spend X percentage of a vehicle's replacement cost to repair it, knowing that you might get a certain, you know, 3, 4, 5 years extra life out of it, 7 years with the fire engine possibly? Is it worth it? You know?
I'm not comfortable with doing it as an article. I think we need to make a decision. We know what happened with an article last year. So either I think we should just make that decision if we're going to have it in the budget or not. There's the part of me, the reason I was looking at this is that if we were to talk, and I hate saying road program, I'm just throwing it as an option, or maybe we find it in other little increments and pots, but and I'll just talk about the dump truck, and I'll make my way down to the fire truck first. When I think of the dump truck and we say, hey, buy a bed for 40,000, okay, that sounds great. That's a vehicle that, just from a standpoint of repairs, especially is that the amount of salt and road debris and things that it picks up during those periods is going to, that vehicle is going to undergo wear faster than a normal vehicle. And now, and having worked heavy trucks in my life, you get to a point where it starts to accelerate, and we're probably close to acceleration. You know, when you start talking the relays and the wiring and how things are working, it will accelerate. There will be other costs involved. So the question with that truck for me is that if we do decide to do a repair, we need to be prepared for future pieces, but the other thing is, we'll be sitting here next year talking about it again. And we'll be adding and compounding again. And so we need, so with the regards of that vehicle, we need to make a decision that, like you say, if we're going to repair it, does this go to 2014? I'm not sold on that concept, though I don't have the answer in front of me of how to correct that. I'm not sold on that concept of going to 2014 with this truck.
Like I said, I mean, you know, we've got it to reach goal, you know, it's
I understand
it's
that.
a quarter of $1,000,000, and something, you know, has to give.
Excuse me, Scott?
Yeah.
I'm looking at the numbers, and I noticed that you brought up the fact that we have the cap reserve fund, and that's not reflected in CIP here. So if you're gonna use, say, the 148,000, you know, that should be reflected, I would think, somewhere in here, but I don't see it. Also, the 190,000 for the ambulance, that's coming out of the EMS Special Revenue Fund, not necessarily out of the operations.
Right.
So if you add the two together, that's pretty darn close to your 223 that
Yeah, and that's where I think,
I think the capital reserve, use of capital reserve fund is in revenues though. That 142 that you're going to use for capital
Okay,
reserve fund?
but if you look at, okay, because I don't see where.
Yeah,
where it would be.
where would that be?
yeah, I thought it would be under, what was that?
I wonder if it's a transfer
Capital.
from trust and agency fund.
Yeah, it's 167,000 there. It's gotta be. Yeah, it's page, it's,
Last page on revenue summary.
looks like
Okay,
that
part
one,
of that
3 lines.
167.
Transfer from trust and agency fund, 167,000.
But then again, you're looking
Then
at
the
the
140s.
ambulance also. I don't know if it's-
No, that would be the ambulance.
Right.
The,
Part of that 167 is the ambulance, I believe.
right, but then, where would the 140 be?
For what?
Well, if the fire engine is
The
in.
capital reserve fund.
Where's that capital reserve fund? That's an offset
For the fire
for
engine.
the fire engine. If it,
I think it's part of the 167.
then where
It's the
is the
190.
ambulance?
The ambulance is 190, that's under EMS,
Oh, okay,
special revenue fund, bottom of the page before.
okay.
Transfer from special revenue fund?
Yeah. We only have one
39,150.
special
Oh, I
revenue fund,
gotcha,
that's
okay.
EMS. So they're both in there.
Okay.
The 230 reflects 190 plus the 40.
Right, I gotcha.
I got a question on is this budget being built with a premise from the fund balance of a certain dollar figure? Did we
We
talk,
haven't gotten to that
Yeah.
yet, but we usually,
last year was
plan
500,000.
500,000.
And the balance, how much is in the balance now? And the
3 point something million.
almost 4 million.
4 million, yeah.
thought, I'm just saying, just a thought, at 223,
You'd have to do a,
Hold on.
either increase the 500,000 to 723, probably do it that way.
That's the
Otherwise, you have to do an actual vote from surplus.
Would be the, other one.
do you follow?
Yeah, I know, I mean, it's,
I'm just putting options out on the table. I have a hard, so because if we were to do from that fund balance to keep
but
us,
that's the, then
that's
you
a
would-
rainy day fund, I
I know,
understand.
no,
that.
no,
Today's-
but arguably, this could be the rainy
Rainy
day,
day.
but
Rainy.
you,
boring.
but then it goes back to what we were saying before, and that is, if you had a warrant article saying that you were buying a fire engine, 142,000 coming from the capital reserve fund, and the balance coming out of the fund balance, that would have no taxation. And it would take that 550 right out of the equation.
I'm just putting that out as an option, and if we were to weigh that option and say that was a viable option versus, I understand that we're talking about, I don't wanna say patch because it's a poor word, but investing in these trucks to see if we can get extensions on the time. Maybe this is the time to do that, because I hate to throw good money after bad. And I feel that we're going to snowball next year and the year after. And we've talked that this is, oh, it's raining, it's pouring out. I'm just throwing that out as an option. And with that being said, that would, could we push out the next fire truck if we took care of number 5? In other words, would it be better to, you follow where I'm going here, Chief? In other words, would it be better to look at something of that nature, go there and then push the other one out and take some breather, or do you do it now? That's the, I'm just throwing that as a thought. Just something to think about.
Well, I think let's talk about the out years, because I know that the DPW vehicle line is not very pleasant in 2012. So someone needs to take a break in 2012. So that's it's not a bad point to make. For the most part, our capital expenses, the biggies, are usually fire apparatus and DPW equipment. If we bite the bullet this year on the fire engine and we go what you're saying, then we need to take a break to try to get the other pieces of equipment from DPW, which it's snowballing on us because of the deferrals. What's everyone else's thoughts on this? We already know you're.
I'm not going to change mine.
Listen, new information has been laid on the table.
No, it is.
No, I mean, I'm just trying to weigh the, I'm just trying to,
waiting for somebody to make a decision.
I'm just trying to weigh the option. One option is to go forward and just find ways to repair the vehicles and stretch out time. The other option is to go back and find $223,000 somewhere else within the budgets. And I was just throwing out a third option, or maybe there's a combination of those factors out there. I'm just trying to brainstorm it.
Well, I guess, though, in further of the discussion of everything that I'm hearing, I mean, putting things off, so let's say we put $40,000 into the body. Let's say we put this $170,000 or whatever it is into the engine, okay? And we put this off. Now, what's going to happen next year when we're sitting here looking at equipment, okay? How much equipment are we going to put off next year? You know what's going to happen? We're going to have the dump truck that we put $40,000 into the body that's got to replace. We're going to be coming up onto, well, the engine, we're getting 6 years. The dump truck, we're getting 3.
Right.
Okay? I mean, putting this all off, no matter, all we're doing is trying to, we're putting something off today, not to spend for it, and we're just exasperating the problem in 2, 3, or 4 years.
And I'll put the other option on the table. If we do the patch, are we prepared next year to go into the fund if we run into a large issue? I mean, maybe it's next year also. I mean, but somewhere along the line, it's going to catch up with us. That's my thought process.
You sure you want to go, or your opinion's changed? All right.
You would allow me a moment. I think we've done an admirable job this evening looking at the operational budgets of the 5 departments. And the heart of the CIP is to amortize your large expenditures and balance it out year after year after year. And there are 2 separate factors there. And we did an admirable job on the departments, and we need to hold true to the intent of the CIP and try to amortize the large expenditures year after year. And you can't go to remove expenses from this year's CIP without making it worse down the road. That's why I'm opposed to it. That's the intent of the CIP. You're violating the whole intent of it if you want to make deep cuts.
So I guess my question, if I can ask them, your thoughts then, where would you find the 223? I mean, I was just throwing some options out there. Where would you find?
I would not find any further cuts.
Anyone else? You sure?
No, well, I would look at replacing the Packer, replacing the fire truck, putting a body on the dump truck, and that leaves us $50,000 over. But I would not look at, I'm not in favor of using the fund balance for purchases.
Are you talking about a fire truck?
That's 5 engine, what's the number, is that engine 5?
And when's the next fire truck come up?
I think the
Engine 1 would be,
following year. Yeah, I mean,
then 2025, 2020?
It's,
Engine 4,
towards 2018, 2017, it's more.
2020, 2025 is engine 6.
I mean,
2019.
far be it from us, I didn't attend CIP meetings, but engine 1 is for 2012. I don't see how we can, do that knowing what we have on the, I don't know, just trying to, I think that expresses more of the urgency, in my opinion, of making sure that engine 5 and tanker 5 get replaced this year. And then trying to limp along with 1 for another year or two, to get us to a little bit of breathing room, because I think.
You take engine 1 and you make it a reserve piece, and you have your engine 6, engine 4.
Right, again, just going the similar thought that Carl does, you put your newest piece where it's gonna see the greatest amount of action, so you're relieving some of that pressure off, say, engine 1, so instead of going out 4 times a day, it's going out maybe once a day.
All right. I think from what everyone said, I think we're all over the board here in terms of where we stand. As I said earlier, I think that the solid waste vehicles 1, the fire engines 2, and the only option that we have is on the dump truck. I'm willing to take that chance on that dump truck, and I know that it's a chance and it's a big gamble, but I'm willing to take it. So I'm with Nick on this particular round of things.
Where's the 23, I mean, you said we're up by 23 by going that way, or 25?
50.
50.
Oh, I'm sorry, 50.
I guess the only concern I have is we put 40,000 into a body. I hate to be sitting here next year saying that we gotta put another
20,000 into an engine or something.
into
Well,
it, you know?
Mhm.
That's,
It's a roll of the dice.
So what's the, I mean, the other thing that I was thinking of and was that if you do put this out as a special article, it does, I mean, it's still a net result in a tax rate, but it lets folks decide what they want to do, and maybe you don't take a large sum from the fund balance, maybe you only take a little bit from the fund balance to try to get to that. I don't know. I mean, our fund balance is generally, it's pretty healthy. I mean,
It's average. I mean,
right,
it's not
it's-
overly.
yeah.
Our goal was 8%,
Yeah.
we're at like
9, yeah. So,
9.6.
If I could, and go with the roll of the dice, I think that's what we're doing with all of the budgets. You know what I mean? If we have radios an overwhelming number of radios that go down, we reduce those lines. I mean, everything that we've looked at in budgets, we're basically rolling the dice. We're hoping that things go well next year, and we can stay within those budget lines.
all right. So there's consensus on the garbage truck and the fire engine, I think? But it's just this dump truck that I think appears to be let's do this. Can we take a break for now?
up to you. You're
I'd
in
like to,
charge.
because I have to use the restroom, so maybe, how about 10 minutes? 5 or 10 minutes? We'll come back? All right.
What's the capital reserve balance?
balance, that's a tool that's out there. Our fund balance has been relatively healthy. I know that years ago, we bumped it up a decent amount. That's an option. I don't know, we never really kind of took Steve, you proffered it, but,
I got another question, Carl, is there let's say we're talking 40,000 possible repairs down the road, is there a possibility of leasing a vehicle for let's say?
You gotta get 3/5. If we lease, we have to get
3/5?
That's a long-term obligation. We don't have the ability to.
And long-term is anything over a year? But if we were to lease, what would be if this was to come to fruition and we could lease?
No, it was a bond,
I'm just saying, instead of, let's just say if we said we want to get to 2014.
If you wanted a one-year lease, we could put that in, right?
What
A one-year lease of a dump truck.
What would that be?
You mean saying like a rental?
Well, that's essentially what you're talking about.
They lease heavy trucks, I don't know what those cost structure is. I don't know.
We essentially did that, and I'm not saying there's a truck manufacturer out there that would do it, but we did that with the excavator years ago. We essentially rented.
You did it year by year. You rented it and then you bought it.
It just so happened that the company we bought it from was willing to keep renting it to us on a yearly basis, and then gave us a payoff at the end that we included in the budget.
All right, if I may, let me just, what this notion of perhaps, putting it out separately and using fund balance to offset the price, Nick stated his spot. I'm open-minded to it.
The one I was thinking of, it wasn't our fund balance, the library bought their land with money they had in the trust fund.
Right.
So,
Didn't we buy an ambulance with?
well, with EMS money.
No, the one year we had to buy the ambulance, we
When
had the
one was
money.
crashed.
Yeah.
I think that is another one. And then we got reimbursed the following year by EMS on that one.
All right, so thoughts on that?
I think it might be something worth exploring and having a discussion on.
David, have you, any opinions on that idea?
This is for the DPW truck, some alternative.
This is a means to accomplish
The same thing.
I think the goal is to replace these vehicles. This would be, Steve's suggestion would be a mechanism in which could accomplish this with no increase to the taxpayer. It would use fund balance, which I believe 2 or 3 years ago we added a good $600,000 to.
660, yeah.
So, it's
I would support that. It achieves my aim of having the vehicles. Maybe
Yeah,
it hurts in a different way, though.
well, if I can, I just have a concern. Having to have purchased equipment over the years, I just am not comfortable to spend $40,000 on a vehicle. We're looking at the 214 now. Don't forget, that 214's gone up approximately $8,000 to $10,000 since we didn't buy it. So, $40,000 in it. Every year that we go by, it's gonna be going up. If you put it off. I'm just, when you're looking at 20% into a vehicle for a body that has 12 years on it, that much, is past the hours on the vehicle that the engine should be replaced. You're looking at transmission, you're looking at every system on that vehicle. And I have a deep concern of putting that kind of money into it, and then just having, at the point where you gotta put more good money into a vehicle that you should have replaced.
From a perspective, and the body is not the part that is essentially moving all the time either. That's not the real wear and tear item.
You got sanders, you got the salter, you got the spreader, you got all those systems on there.
Candidly, I have very little experience in heavy equipment. I know that you do. And Phil, I know you've been, doing this for a while, and obviously we have a town mechanic who looks through these things. So we were able to, limp along another year. But I think we're gonna be questioned by folks in the budget committee, well, can we limp along another year? That's gonna be the $64,000 question is, well, we said the same thing last year and we got another year out of it. Why can't you get me another one?
Just because I knew that question was going to be asked, so I kind of put it to Mark in that if you were forced to choose, where would you come down? And in his, for him, if it's a choice, I mean, obviously it needs to be replaced or we wouldn't be asking for it. But the garbage truck was the one that he just doesn't think he can get another year out of. The 10-wheeler, I think the way he worded it is if I have to, if I do the body. But I don't think he's making guarantees for 2014. He's just saying it's for another year.
If I can, that's my point. We're putting $40,000 into a vehicle, 20% of the replacement cost of that vehicle to get another year.
Instead of, to buy 15 years?
Well, currently we're looking at 12-year replacement schedule.
12 years, okay.
How old is that vehicle? 12?
I believe it's a 99.
And what's our replacement schedule? Every 12 years, you said?
We increased it to 12
It used to be 10.
years. It used to be 10.
Right.
We increased it to 12 because of the backup.
It's not so long.
16, 15 a year.
Yeah, where I see us in the same place as when we had the Max. We had a fleet of Max, and we did the same thing. We put it off, and we put it off. And here we are, all of a sudden, how many years later, the truck should have been replaced quite a while ago, and now we gotta replace the whole fleet. And that's where I see us going.
All right. Let's go back to Selectman Fournier's suggestion, and that's to, put this out as a separate article, use fund balance or a sum of it fund balance.
Well, you don't have to do it
I
as
was
such
not,
article.
You don't have-
thank you, I was not
No.
offering to put it,
We budget a deficit of 500,000 by planning on using 500,000 from our fund balance. If you
Correct.
plan to use 723, is it?
we'll make it 700. Can you find 23, Carl?
If you plan to use 700, then you just plan and budget on deficit
Okay.
of 700,000.
And what's our current fund balance?
3.9.
About 4 million.
But that's not to say that, when you have your fund balance, if, you're, obviously, we're in a tight year, but then you have to manage that, your cash, your surplus, big time.
Yeah, and as the operating budget gets smaller and smaller.
Right, there's less
surplus.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost $1 million.
What's $1 million?
I'm saying it's close to $1 million you're taking out of, 750,000.
Is it doable?
We put $660,000 into it 3 years ago.
I know, but we're not doing that this year.
No, I understand that. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, 2 or 3 years ago, we put 660 in it to beef it up.
But you remember, you predicate each year with a $500,000 withdrawal, but the budgets, the surpluses each year now are getting smaller and smaller and smaller, so it's not going to be
Right.
replenished at the same rate that we're taking out of.
Yeah.
Right. But then
Well, look at your surplus in '09. You've got the summary sheet there. Those weren't the audited numbers. I didn't have time to update it to audited numbers.
Where would that be?
General fund and the summary sheet. There'll be the difference between the 17 million that was budgeted and the 16.5.
I think, kind of encumbrances.
encumbrances are in there?
I don't know exactly.
I have a question also while we're looking.
Yep.
When we go into,
768.
into next year, and what's on the equipment list again? For large scale?
Oh, you have
Is
the
it-
back-on truck at
And a
almost,
Sterling dump.
and the Sterling dump.
Dollar-wise?
Greater.
Dollar-wise?
Oh, that's a lot. Hold on. You're talking back on 392, Sterling dump 158, Caterpillar grader 90. Then you're talking another F550 dump truck 92,000, F350 with plow. That was a sewer one though. That was 48,000.
And a VACCON, we get part of it reimbursed from sewer.
For sewer too.